right, friends, welcome back to another episode about planetary conjunctions and April transits. So today I'm going to be talking about the conjunction of North Node Rahu with Saturn and Venus in the sign of Pisces. However, if you have this conjunction in your birth charts, this video will apply because I'm going to try to explain what this conjunction in general means, and then what it means in the sign of Pisces, and then what it means in the context of April's transits and the unfolding of time at this current moment in our life. And before moving on, if you like the content of this video or what's on this channel, please do remember to like, subscribe, and comment. You know I love your comments. And if you want chart readings from me, you can go to parisayazi.com. There you'll find my services, nakshatra readings, archetypal life narrative counseling, as well as just doing a thorough chart analysis for you. You can also find my courses and classes there. And without further ado, let's get into the transit of April and this conjunction. So I'm going to start off like this. This is a special conjunction, especially between Saturn and North Node Rahu. In Indian astrology, the conjunction of these two planets has a lot of significance in general. And in the middle of all this, in the month of April, we're throwing in an exalted Venus in the sign of Pisces. So we have malefics conjuncting an exalted benefic. So one of the things to keep in mind, what generally happens when we have malefics conjunct a dignified benefic? Now, and we have to always consider which house and what sign something's sitting in. And we have to consider, this means that the kinds of outcomes that are supposed to be signified by this signature is that the planet of reality, revealer, and reality maker, such as Saturn, is going to show certain particular truths to this benefic Venus, something imperative for it to become conscious of. And the function of Rahu here is to accelerate the seeing, meaning that if Rahu wasn't here, Saturn could have imparted that lesson very slowly to Venus, because Saturn is a slow moving planet. But when you get Rahu here, Rahu North Node is going to accelerate this process. So some realization, some event, something that was supposed to come to you, let's say 9 years and 3 months from now, is coming to you now in courtesy of Rahu. And it's going to be intense because Rahu's intense and Saturn's heavy. So this is not a light conjunction, and it's not representing lighter components of love and relationships and connections and sensuality, which are all part of Venus's significations. So this 26-degree conjunction of Saturn and Rahu, we can think about Rahu as the accelerator of Saturn's karmic timeline, and the recipient of that is going to be Venus. So in some ways, Rahu is going to agitate Saturn to let go of those karmic things, the cause and effect that Saturn loves to bring to the forefront in time right now. And we're going to remember, Rahu in Pisces actually has a lot of power right now. What does the sign of Pisces represent? It blurs boundaries and lines. Like Saturn wants to set the boundaries and the lines, the limits, like you can't go there and you can't do that. And the sign of Pisces in general is diffusing all these boundaries and merging things together. And Rahu loves to devour boundaries, because whenever we have a boundary, is separating time and space. It's like, this is what can be done now, right now, relative to what we've done before. Rahu's like, I want to stick my head out in the future and just eat the future, devour it. So Rahu's always trying to somehow pull the future into the present. This is how it pushes itself forward and outward. And Saturn here is generally like the cosmic wall of like, nope, this is the limit, you can't go any further. But Rahu in the sign of Pisces is empowered because Pisces already helping Rahu to do this. So Saturn here is kind of being rendered more powerless than Rahu, let's say. So it's kind of like normally time would unfold sequentially one after another. In the sign of Pisces, you can think of it just like all imploding into each other, merging and submerging. So this is kind of like finding ourselves in a very unexpected situation where we don't have an opportunity to ease into the consequences of things. We're just in it. What was supposed to be handed out way later on, the verdict is handed now, very unexpectedly. Because that's what the nodes generally do. That's what the eclipses are about. There's a sense of suddenness to them. And even though this is not an eclipse, the North Node Rahu and South Node Ketu, when conjunct planets, they bring this quality to them. And this conjunction, I was saying earlier, it's a special one. In Indian astrology or Vedic astrology, this conjunction has a name. So it's Saturn Rahu Yuti, and it's also known as Śani-Rāhu Śrapit Yoga. And I know you're going to look this up, and then you're going to see the translation of it, which is considered a cursed combination. But I don't want you to think about it as cursed. This is difficult, right? We human beings, that which we don't understand, and that which creates a lot of instant hardship for us, and because we can't discern where it's coming from or where it's about, it has this feeling, this archaic word that we like to attach to things, which is evil, right? For example, a lot of things that used to be seen as evil, we didn't understand the cause and effect for it back in the day, so it was just some evil entity causing it. Today, we know it's not an evil entity, it's like a virus that's causing it. So if you look this word up and you come across the word curse, please do not freak out. Just use some of that Mercury's intellect to discern what we're talking about. And I would argue the way to look at this is just, it's talking about massive karmic entanglement where we don't, in the moment of occurrence, have the discernment to understand why this is happening to us right now. But it's something that needs to be addressed. And it's just the time for it has come where it cannot be bypassed or postponed anymore. We have to face the music of it right now. And you know, the way that this conjunction feels in general, it feels like a karmic test where the things that we obsess about and we really want them come to a head-on collision with some sort of a resistance. There's nothing worse than like obsessing about something and then at the same time having to resist that obsession. It almost feels like an impossibility. But that's the feeling that this conjunction can produce. It can also represent very deep-rooted fears or compulsion around control or being controlled, or compulsions that we have related to our ambitions and the way how no matter how hard we reach, they kind of remain out of our reach. This conjunction is also telling us something about the need to break limitations, but at the same time, imposition of new limitations come into place. And Rahu is very unorthodox. So whenever Rahu is conjunct a planet, you can see unorthodox or a non-normative way of that planet's behavior. And Saturn represents things that are contained. It's talking something about the structure that contains and limits. So it's about wanting to break those structures to gain power. But that suddenness and intensity just takes it to a whole new level in terms of what this means. So some of the ways to look at this, like the old structures or systems of authority with this kind of a conjunction, this is how things come to their breaking point. But let's say that system of authority breaks down, another system must be imposed right away. And usually it's going to be a hell of a lot more harsh than the last system to prevent chaos and disorder to occur. Or this is the instance of having our compulsive actions, like what I need to do right now, very impulsively, which is North Node Rahu, come into like a direct head-on and intense collide, like a collision with reality and its consequences. So this is like the dynamic just between Rahu and Saturn. And then when we throw Venus in the mix, especially in the sign of Pisces, because it's exalted in the sign of Pisces, this conjunction can indicate, let's say, for example, just as an example, a sudden break in a relationship, because the sign of Pisces has to do with dissolving boundaries, right? A lot of time when you're in a relationship with someone else, it's almost as if having certain set boundaries that maintain you and the other person into a relational dynamic with each other. When you have this kind of a combination, it can talk about a rupture and a break where those boundaries dissolve. So that dissolves the relationship. It can also bring us to a head-on collision where we start to get an awareness of where we have illusions and delusions about our entanglements with other people, which again wants to create that rupture. It brings that component of obsession and resistance into a direct head-on collision. And the sign of Pisces, it's very like incorporative, inclusive, everything in a merged state. So it can start to show us unresolved emotions, beliefs, all coming up to the surface from the depth of Pisces. And for this, always look at the house where the sign of Pisces is sitting in your chart, because it's talking about resolving itself, working itself out through the themes of that house, that domain of life, that house, as well as the people that pertain to that house. That house becomes the field where things are activated. You know, with this Rahu situations, Rahu's like reaching into the vault of Saturn and is like, I want those karmic verdicts now. And it's funny, when Saturn and Rahu come into a conjunction, Saturn, the naysaying planet who loves to say no, for some reason, when Rahu comes into the equation, it complies with this request. It's like having some sort of a loophole in the system where it's like, yep, I can find the reality and the application for it. Let's do it. And in the sign of Pisces in general, just thinking about the sign, they can be karmas of belief, faith, surrender, avoidance, escapism, longing, the need to merge and the yearning to become one. And then you have the planet of Venus there. So it's telling us something about all of these themes, the way they are related to love. Have we used love as a form of escapism? Have we surrendered to, let's say, abusive and toxic relationships? Like that toxicity is going to come out so strongly that you cannot avoid but to see the truth and the reality of the situation, as an example. I know the sign of Pisces has been busy. It's trying to surface things from the depth of itself, because Pisces represents the depth of things. It has a lot of depth. If you have knowledge, you have depth of knowledge. If you have illusions and delusions, they run very deep. So that's what the sign of Pisces has, depth. And if you think about it, every single planet since last summer has moved through the sign of Pisces, with the exception of Jupiter and then the modern planets, Pluto and Neptune. I'm sorry, Neptune was there. What am I saying? Uranus. But every planet has moved through it. And we had Mercury's retrograde cycle there. We've had Venus's retrograde cycle there. We had Saturn retrograde there. The nodes moved in there. We already had an eclipse in there. Saturn and Sun were conjunct there. Mars was there last summer. It's like what Pisces is in our chart, it was fully activated within the past year. And by May 24th, technically, the only thing that remains in Pisces is Rahu North Node. Everything has moved out for a long time till Saturn starts his retrograde and comes back one last time into the sign of Pisces. So Pisces has been like a container of all the things that have been unresolved, suppressed, repressed, pushed down to the depth of ourselves for an entire lifetime, where it was actually causing soul level confusion. And all of these planets, one by one, based on their symbols and significations, as they came into the sign, they revealed something to us. And this is like the last bit of purging that's going to happen with the Saturn Rahu conjunction. We can see this like a karmic reckoning, but it's coming through the Venusian qualities. It's going to be related to the things that Venus represents. So if you're a creative, it will represent that aspect of your life, because Venus represents that. If you're in a relationship, it can represent that. The things that we value in life and we think are valuable, these are the things that are being purged. It's almost as if the sign of Pisces was super polluted and it needed to clear itself out. And it's been doing that for a year. And the last bit of it, this last cleanup of it, is going to be worked out through Venus's significations. And you got to remember, Venus in Pisces, we like to give it a very like a sweet slant, especially because it's exalted. But it's talking about martyrdom in a lot of ways too. It's talking about the dreamer. It's talking about self-sacrifice. And you know what? These are not bad qualities per se, but are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you doing this for the right person, for the right circumstance? So this combination is going to show us. I know, and I talk about this in another video. Venus is just becoming visible as the morning star after being invisible in the sky. And this goes back to the myth of Inanna. When she goes into the underworld, she's stripped bare, naked, and pretty dead dead before she's rescued. So this Pisces in general is not like a luxurious Pisces. This Venus in Pisces was struggling. It's gone through all that retrograde phase. I know when Venus comes in the story, Inanna comes from the underworld to the overworld. There's one condition for her to come back by her sister, is that you have to have someone to trade places with you in the underworld. And when Inanna emerges, it sees that the person, her beloved, her husband, the person that's supposed to love her and be the most worried that she has disappeared, is the one who's basically having an affair with other women and just having a luxurious, fun old time. And this Inanna forces her husband to go into the underworld and be in that torturous state. So I'm talking about this notion of sacrifice, being a martyr. Is it for the right person? Especially with this morning star version of Venus now coming out, where it's strong. It's not like its night version where it represents more of the feminine qualities. There's a kind of an assertiveness to the morning star of Venus. And in the Sumerian versions of Venus, Venus is, in its morning star form, is a warrior. She is fierce. She's worshipped when humans want to go to war. So this is the kind of Venus that's emerging now too, unlike the one that's related to the evening star, that's related to fertility and softness and more of components that are related to the feminine aspects. So this is like a moment of consciousness for Venus in terms of like, who am I devoted to? What am I devoted to? What the hell have I merged with? What has remained of myself? And remember, Venus has to go back to the sign of Aries where it started its retrograde cycle, that process of individuation, right? So this is the realization. This is the rude awakening with Saturn and Rahu conjunct. It's like accelerating a kind of an understanding that might have come way later in time. It's coming now. And it's fast, it's intense, it's heavy, it's hard, but it's necessary. Like you can think of this with Venus in the mix as emotional debt that you owe to others because of the things that you've done, or emotional debts, karmic debts that others have to you. This can be a realization about romantic or relational patterns that we have that are idealized and not rooted in reality. For example, where we self-sacrifice for others or expect others to self-sacrifice for us, we accumulate a kind of a debt to existence when we don't operate on the premise of reality. Like if there are debts of betrayal, have you betrayed someone? Has someone betrayed you? This is the time to pay it. This is what Rahu's pulling out of the heart of Saturn. This is why it's so difficult and why it's been called a kind of a conjunction that has a flair of a curse to it, quote unquote. Like with this one too, you can see like, have you tried to find false refuge in a place? Taking the sign of Pisces into consideration, spirituality. Have you bypassed your responsibilities in the name of spirituality, for example? Has someone else done that to you in the name of spirituality? This is that karmic reckoning right now. Reality is coming into that kind of a clash where we can't do that anymore. And like on collective level, like we're looking for that one savior. We're looking for some sort of a salvation from that one leader. This is where Saturn's reality, even in the sign of Pisces, is coming into the forefront. I know it might seem sudden because of that Rahu coming into the conjunction of these planets, but if it happens and we're sitting in the midst of it, and if we take a minute to take in a deep breath, and in that breath, reflect, we'll see how things were blurred, how we blurred things, how others were blurring things, the sign of Pisces, how we were numbing things, suppressing and repressing things. And now they're just surfacing in front of us and it's unmistakable. And we can't just sit there and look at it. You know, sometimes when they want to do mass fishing, they throw some sort of an explosive device into the water and it goes off underneath the water and then all the fish start floating to the top of it. This is kind of like that kind of a moment. And you can't just be swimming in that ocean with a corpse of like thousands of fish. You either have to get out or you got to clean all that fish out. That's what this moment's like. Let's say you've been waiting for a closure. You want a moment of truth. You want truthfulness out of yourself or someone else. This conjunction is saying that time is here and time's up for keeping things at the bottom, hidden, away, no consequences, this is why this conjunction's difficult. Even though Venus is exalted on a normal day, we'd love to have Venus in the sign of Pisces. You can think of Saturn standing in front of, you can think of Rahu standing in front of Saturn with his finger in Saturn's face saying, deliver the truth of the future now. Deliver its lessons now. Deliver what's been delayed now. Like these things on a normal day without this conjunction could have waited, but not anymore. And Saturn obliges, and not softly, not wishy-washy with Rahu, but with a sense of finality to it. And that's because Rahu is not just asking Saturn. Rahu's going to do what Rahu does to everything, which is to compel something. So it compels Saturn to do it, and Saturn will keep that contract. And we could say that this is the essence of that Śani-Rāhu Yoga. This is like where karmic duty can no longer be deferred. This is where avoidance becomes absolutely impossible. Or the things that we have resisted, now we have to endure, face, and confront. And with Venus here, well, what is it talking about? What do you love? Who do you love? What do you value? Who do you give yourself to? What of yourself do you give to others? So it's no longer talking about preferences and the sensual pleasure of things with this conjunction when it comes to Venus. Everything right now feels very faded, heavy, even overdue. And we got to remember, like I said, we like to see Venus in the sign of Pisces as like very lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey. But Venus in Pisces isn't really light either because it's devotional. And what we are devoted to, if you think about it, so much of it is a process of negation because you're casting your gaze, you're giving your heart to one direction. There's no going anywhere else. Everything else is being negated except the object of your desire, whether that is God or that is your beloved, that is your child, that is your creativity, whatever that might be. To be devotional and to be devoted is not an easy thing to do. That's why we live in a world of indulgence. There's so much hedonism, instant gratification. This is not Venus in Pisces. So just imagine having this concept of what we've been devoted to, tested as an example. Or maybe things will be so negated that suddenly we can see that what we need to be devoted to, that all this other stuff is nonsensical. All the stuff I want to merge with, all the stuff that I want to do, and I want to have that sensual pleasure and that expression. Maybe it's a good thing for a lot of us to know where we can cast our gaze and how we can direct our heart and just move towards that, and to be able to let the rest of it just submerge and fade away and dissolve. So this is another outcome that could come out of this that is not so brutal and hard. So I would say, honestly, with Rahu and Saturn involved here, even though it is in the sign of Pisces, this is not a time where you can dream your way into reality. Like that moment's done. This is what this conjunction's saying. Like you want it to be wishy-washy and just keep imagining things, just keep waiting, that sense of escapism that can come here. This is the time to meet reality. It's about the sign of Pisces, I was saying, is about integration and incorporation. We have to be able to integrate and incorporate things so that so it can have an application in reality. And think about it. Mercury is in the sign of Aries. Aries is about individuation that occurs through action. And action is related to the form that's manifest, that can act in the world. So we're talking about that realness and that application. Even Neptune, the dream planet, is in the sign of actions, where now we have to have application even for our lofty ideas so we can act them out. Sun in the sign of Taurus, an earth sign, a grounded sign, a practical sign. Again, we're talking about the same thing. Mars in the sign of Leo right now, trying to get us ignited and activated to act from our center. And Venus is going to be there. And even Saturn's going to be in the sign of Aries. So whatever it is that we've been just sitting on and dreaming about it, that time is up. That's what Rahu's doing. Rahu's concluding that time right now. And this is difficult because Rahu's fast forwarding time. So our tempo and our rhythm and pace of time and how we do things suddenly shifts beneath our feet, which demands of us to accelerate our understanding. And that lack and that gap in understanding of where we've been, where we are, and how fast we're being drawn to the next place is what makes this conjunction feel like a curse. That's what makes it difficult. But it's good to remember the karma is coming up right now. They were always going to come up. But because of this conjunction, it's accelerating and it's just saying, this is the time now. No more time. You run out of time. Time's up. It's just like Rahu, you know, when you have those calendars with pages, so every day you rip off a page. Rahu just reached, grabbed a bunch of pages, like 9 years worth of pages, rip them off, throw them out. It's like, nope, you're here now. And Saturn's like, all right, gonna create that cause and effect now rather than 9 years from now. I know what, honestly, like this last part of April has not been subtle. It's not subtle. We had Mercury go from a debilitation to a very activated sign. We've had Mars from a debilitation move to a very activated sign. The sun's going from its exaltation to a place that now needs to be more practical and stable. So the shifts, we can feel it anyway. But this is just going to bring an extra flair to the whole thing. All of it feels like some sort of a turning point. And I don't mean like fireworks turning point. If we pay attention to our lives, we're starting to understand certain things, even at the most basic level, which is fundamental to our life. It just doesn't feel quiet. And externally, you might be feeling it too, that this is not a quiet moment. And I'm very happy personally, no offense to Pisces or anyone who has heavy Pisces placements, but there's a sense of fogginess often when you have a lot of things happening in Pisces. So just to have this last bit and get out of that fog, I'm looking forward to it personally. It kind of, the past few months feel like some sort of like being suspended in mid-air and mid-space. Time was suspended. The objects of the world were suspended. Nothing could move. But now we can see the entire chart is getting some sort of a momentum. It's becoming more action-oriented. It wants to direct itself somewhere. And I think the question from here forward for the rest of 2025, especially when Venus moves out of the sign of Pisces is into Aries, we are really gonna have to ask, like, where are we driving to? And that's why I was saying earlier that notion of devotion here is a beautiful thing. If we can figure out through all the upheaval and the fogginess and the turmoil of the past few months to at least understand where our sense of devotion is so that we can direct our actions that way. And if we reflect back, there was a lot of reactivity in the past few months, especially with Mars being debilitated and all the Pisces stuff happening. We're starting to have a sense that we can have some steadiness, especially with that sun now in the sign of Taurus. I'm going to come back to talk about the T-square between Mars, Pluto, and Sun, because Mars will be opposing Pluto in the sign of Aquarius from Leo, and then they're both squaring the Sun, which is a T-square. And that brings a whole lot of challenges. But again, and I feel that too is a way for us to direct our compass in the right way, just as much as this is this conjunction of these three planets, Saturn, North Node, Rahu, and Venus. It's kind of telling us how our compass was actually broken and where it needs to be directed to now. And I would say from here forth for the rest of 2025, whatever contracts that are coming into place, they're active, they're binding. What we do right now is going to have long echoes for years to come. It's the precursor for many things. I was saying earlier, we purged many things. So we cleared the way for many things. We incorporated and integrated what needed to be, which allowed us to make more space for other things. But this isn't the final form or shape of things. We're going to be molding it, but these were the necessary first steps. And we can think of them as the cost to clarity, knowing where we're devoted, where our heart is pointing to, how to direct our actions. And if we really reflect back, the story has changed a lot. So now we just have to realize where we're walking to and how we're going to do this walk. And a lot of time, how we do things is a hell of a lot more important than where we're actually going. Because I feel that when we're laying on our deathbed, the quality of life cannot be quantified in terms of where we've been and what we got, but how do we actually live? So I think these are important points to keep in mind. And I'm going to wrap up this video here. And as I said, I'll come back to talk about that T-square. May you emerge as the morning star, shining your light where it matters and where your heart remains content. Sending you much love. Till next time.